just the introduction of Tajweed. We talked about different sciences regarding Tajweed. We talked about ilm al-qira'ah. Ilm al-qira'ah, the science of the recitation of the Quran, perfecting the recitation of the Quran, which is comprised of 3 separate sciences, which the Qurra have to master. The first science was ilm al-tajweed, which is the one, inshallah, we are endeavoring towards. The second one is ilm al-waqf, the science of where to stop and when to stop, and how is one supposed to stop when they need to stop. And the last science is ilm al-rasm, which is the actual wording and how the Quran is written. We discussed that the Quran was revealed in sab'at ahruf, in 7 different modes of recitation. So, according to how they are recited, there's different wordings in terms of how they're pronounced. The example we gave was Maliki Yawmiddin versus Maliki Yawmiddin. And when we look at words like Ar-Rahman, the alif is not present after the meme in Ar-Rahman in the Quran, but it's read as Ar-Rahman. And the example of Rahma, that Rahma is spelled with the ta marbuta at the end, the small ta that becomes a ha when you stop on it, and sometimes it's spelled with a long ta, the ta mabsuta, so it becomes Rahmat. So when that happens, why does it happen? All of that is involved in the science of ilm al-rasm. So what we are going to do, inshallah, is endeavor, inshallah, to just get the basic rules of Tajweed. This PowerPoint is quite extensive, so I might be gliding over some things. Some things I might touch upon maybe a little bit, some things I might stress upon, inshallah. So today, just an overview. What I want to do today is we're going to do a little bit more for the theory of Tajweed, some practical things, and then we're going to get into the makharij, where each letter is pronounced. And the goal for today is I want to finish all of the makharij, inshallah ta'ala, and I won't be taking too long, inshallah. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And then after as well, we will start the recitation of Surah Fatiha. So we went over this first slide, the definition of Tajweed, the subject matter, object and status, and also the command in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. Recite the Quran with tartil. And tartil is just a synonym for Tajweed. We'll go over, this is not too important, but we'll just go over it. The types of recitation, you'll notice that some type of Qurra, they decide to read a little bit slower than others. Like Qari Abdul Basit, very famous reciter of the Quran, very famous Qari. The way that he recites is known as tartil. It's extremely slow. Each letter is pronounced very specifically. Every letter you can hear, every letter you can see exactly how he says it. That's an example of Shaykh Abdul Basit. Tadweer is just a medium pace. You'll notice in fard salahs, when you're in the normal jama'ah, how the imam recites the Quran. And the faster pace, usually in tarawih salah, is called a hadar. Now, before we begin the makharij, there are 2 types of mistakes that we need to go over. The type of mistakes that one can make when reading the Quran. They're divided into 2. So for those who are taking note, the first mistake is called a lahn jali. Lahnun jaliyun, which is considered a major mistake. And if there's a major mistake, then there has to be a minor mistake, which is called a lahnun khafiyun, lahn khafi. Lahn jali is prohibited, it's haram to make, and it's sinful to make this type of mistake. And it should be corrected as soon as possible. We will go over what defines, what are the parameters of a lahn jali. And lahn khafi is makruh, it's disliked to make this type of mistake. We will also go over the parameters of what is considered a lahn khafi. So the 2 types of mistakes, there's a lahn jali and there's a lahn khafi. So the first one, lahn jali, this is the major mistake. Number 1, the first criteria for lahn jali is to replace a letter with another letter. Sometimes when we're reading, many hufad, they could mistaken a fa for a waw. Right, instead of a fa, sometimes what's placed is a waw. And in many places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allaha azizun hakim, Inna Allaha ghafurur rahim, Inna Allaha alimun hakim, Inna Allaha tawwabun hakim, Inna Allaha ra'ufur rahim. So it's very hard to remember, of course, but replacing one word for another, even a letter, replacing a letter for, I think the word one is going to come up, but replacing one letter for another, this is considered a major mistake. Why? Because again, this is changing the ahruf, the huruf of the Quran. So an example is to recite kul instead of qul. So kul is the amr form, is the command form of the verb akala ya'kulu, which means to eat. And kul is the amr form, the command form, which means to eat. So eat. Kulu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Mursalat, Kulu washrabu hani'an bima kuntum ta'malun. Inna kadhalika najzil muhsinin. Eat and drink, regarding glad tidings of what you used to do in the dunya. This is how we reward those who do well, those who do ihsan in the dunya. But as you can see, the first letter of kul is a kaf, and what often happens is we mistaken the kaf for a qaf. The makhraj for each of these letters are different, but they almost sound the same. Some people often just don't even recognize the difference. One thing we should know is that if there are 29 letters of the alphabet, of the Arabic alphabet, there's a reason for that. That means each and every letter is pronounced differently. Just like how in the English alphabet, a B is not pronounced like a C, and a C is not pronounced like a D, and so on and so forth. Just like that, an alif is not pronounced like a ba, and a ba is not pronounced like a ta, and a ta is not pronounced like a ta. A dha is not pronounced, a dhal is not pronounced like a dha. Similarly, a kaf is not pronounced like a qaf. Because of this very minor change, it actually amounts to a major mistake, because it changes the meaning from kul, which means eat, to qul, which is the amr form, the command form of qala yaqulu, qawl, to say something. Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said. So qul means to say it. Qulu means many people to say. So when you change the kaf to a qaf, you change the meaning. A very, very famous example of this is the word qalb. Often cited as an example. Qalb, does anyone know what the word qalb means? Qalbun, the heart. Qalb means the heart, with the qaf. Now we change the qaf to a kaf. Kalb, anyone know what kalb means? It means a dog. So just by changing the letters, you change the meaning from a heart to a dog. You can see the very stark difference in the meaning. So just changing one letter changes the whole meaning. In Surah Nuh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the various gods that the Qawm Nuh used to worship. One of them was a Nasr, which is an eagle. And if you change that sin to a Sad, Nasr means to help. Nasr means to help. Comes from Nasara Yansuru, means to help someone. A Nasir is someone who helps. Mansur is someone who is helped. So Nasr with a sin means an eagle, but Nasr with a Sad, it means to help. Halqun, and there's a khalqun. Halq means to shave the head. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Fath, لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا بِالْحَقِّ لَتَدْخُلُنَّ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامَ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ مُحَلِّقِينَ رُؤُوسَكُمْ. That لَقَدْ صَدَقَ Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken the truth regarding the vision that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had seen when they went for Umrah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the dream that they were going to perform Umrah. These were after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they will, insha'Allah, تَدْخُلُنَّ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامِ. They will certainly enter Masjid al-Haram, insha'Allah, by the will of Allah. Amineen, completely safe. مُحَلِّقِينَ رُؤُوسَكُمْ, with their heads shaven. So halq means to shave. And then if you replace that ha with the kha, again, the ha and the kha are very close in their makhraj, very close. They're throat letters. There are 6 throat letters. And ha and kha are one of them. Very close in their makhraj. If one were to replace one for the other, completely changes the meaning again. Second type of lahin jali is to add an extra letter. So when we're reading Surah Fatiha, oftentimes what happens is that we're reading as Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. What happens is we stretch the dal. The dhamma and the dal, Alhamdu, we stretch that. Lillahi, stretch that as well. So when you stretch it, what happens is you're actually adding a letter. You're adding one of the letters that have mad, ya and waw. Ya and waw are considered the letters of mad. We will go over the makhraj of these two letters. When added, it changes the meaning. It doesn't change the meaning, but it distorts the meaning. Because now it doesn't really have a meaning. It's pronounced Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. One is not supposed to stretch on the dal nor the ha. So the third type is to remove a letter. So as you can see over here is to replace one letter, to change it, replace it. The other one is to add one. So logically there would be one to delete a letter, to remove a letter. An example of this is when reciting Surah Ikhlas. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad. As a youngster, I remember I used to hear this. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Right? Lam yalid wa lam yulad. It's not pronounced lam yalid wa lam yulad. You have to stretch the waw. Yulad. Right? The verb is walada yalidu, means to give birth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lam yalid, neither did someone give him birth. Wa lam yulad, nor does he give birth to anyone. These are the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lam yulad means that he does not give birth to anyone. And that waw is there to stretch the waw. The ya with the dhamma on top. And when one does not stretch that ya with the dhamma on top, you're actually deleting the waw. And deleting the waw, or deleting a letter in itself, is considered a major mistake. Another one is to make a mistake on the harakat and sakanat. Harakat are, zabr zir pesh, or fatha, dhamma, and kasra. And the sakanat, the sukun or the jazm. Now making a mistake on that could actually change the meaning. Very small mistakes could change the meaning. Very, very small mistakes. To recite ahdina instead of ihdina in Surah Al-Fatiha, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Instead of saying that, you say ahdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Shu'ara, that mundir comes from andhara yundhiru, which means to warn. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He has sent to a nation warners, mundhirin. Now there's a kasra on the dhal in this word, mundhirin, correct? Now when we change that kasra to a fatha, instead of saying mundhirin, if one were to say mundharin, one small little change in the harakat, mundhirin to mundharin, completely changes the meaning. Because mundhirin refers to the one who does indhar, the one who warns. Mundhir. Mundharin means those who are warned. So if we were to change them around and make the prophets are known as the warners. But if we change that kasra to a fatha, mundharin, then we change the meaning that we change the prophets into those who are warned. And those who are warned are considered the qawm, the nation of the prophets. Another example is in Surah Al-Baqarah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. When Dawood alayhi salam killed Jalut. Right, David and Goliath, when David killed Goliath. Now in the Arabic language, when you're studying grammar, there are certain harakat, certain fatha, kasra, dhamma that when you place at the end of a letter, it changes its role in the sentence. It changes its role in the sentence. So qatala Dawudu, when you add that dhamma at the Dawudu, it changes it into the doer of the sentence. In the sentence, the doer, right? He ran to the store. So he is, the subject, meaning the doer of the action of running. And the store would be the object, where he ran to. Right? It's simple English language. He ran to the store. He is the subject, the doer of the verb running, and the store would be the object. Similarly, qatala Dawudu with the dhamma, it makes it the doer of the sentence. And Jaluta, when you add a fatha, when you add the zabar on the end of a word, again, this is very simplified, but when you add the zabar at the end of a word, it changes it into the object. So Dawudu, David, qatala, killed, Jaluta, he killed Jalut. Dawood alayhi salam killed Jalut. But when you switch the harakat, instead of saying qatala Dawudu Jaluta, one were to say qatala Dawuda Jalutu. Now what happens? Now Jalut, the word Jalut has a dhamma at the end and becomes the doer of the sentence. And since Dawood has a fatha at the end, it becomes the object. So now the meaning changes into Goliath killed David, Jalut killed David, just by changing that one harakah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding the ulama, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. Those who truly fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His servants are the ulama, the scholars. Now again, if one were to apply this logic and change it, instead of saying إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ, one were to say إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءَ. Now the sentence is changed and it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fears the ulama. And that's a very grave statement to say. Because the statement is supposed to say that the ulama fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But by changing the harakat, you can change the meaning. Now, lahm jali, we went over 4 of them. First one is to replace a letter. Second one is to add a letter. Third one to remove. And fourth is to change the harakat or the sakanat. Lahm khafi, the minor mistakes. Minor mistakes, this is more has to do with pronouncing the letters. You know what letter to pronounce, but you're not pronouncing it correctly. The first one is to make a mistake in pronouncing the letter ra, empty mouth or full mouth. There are conditions for when ra is pronounced empty mouth, and there are conditions for when ra is pronounced full mouth. For example, in Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman, you're supposed to pronounce it full mouth. Another example is in the word Fir'aun. There's a ra in it, but you don't pronounce it full mouth. It's pronounced empty mouth. Fir'aun. You don't say Fir'aun. Fir'aun. Right? Another example is in Surah An-Nas. You say, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ No. In Surah Al-Falaq, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ. You don't say min sharri. You say min sharri. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. You don't say sharri. Sharri is wrong because that's a full mouth. You're supposed to pronounce it empty mouth. So there are general guidelines and rules for that. We will go over them. But just pronouncing the ra differently, this could amount to a lahm khafi, a minor mistake. To recite Rabbuna with an empty mouth, instead of saying Rabbuna, you say Rabbuna. Another lahm khafi is to make a mistake in pronouncing the letter lam, in the word Allah. When you're saying Allah, I believe I mentioned this yesterday, Allah is pronounced muraqqaq, it's pronounced full mouth. Allah, because it has a fatha or a dhamma before it. So when pronouncing illallah, la ilaha illallah, instead of illallah, someone were to pronounce illallah. Right? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. To say illallah, that's wrong because it is a fatha before it. One must pronounce it with a full mouth. Illallah. The example of an empty mouth is in Surah Al-Fatiha or in the beginning before you recite the tasmiyah, Bismillah. You don't say Bismillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi. You don't say Alhamdulillahi. This is a lahm khafi. To make a mistake on the ghunna in nun sakin and tanween. For example, in Surah Al-Fatiha, right? Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, sirat al-ladina. Instead of saying an'amta, someone were to say an'amta. Right? They thought that over here you're supposed to do an ikhfa. Ikhfa, we're going to get shortly to ikhfa. So someone thought that they're supposed to do ikhfa on this word. But in ikhfa, you're not supposed to do it after one of the huruf halqi, the throat letters. Ayn is one of the throat letters. So you're not supposed to do ikhfa before one of those letters. So you're supposed to say an'amta, not an'amta. Or when you're saying anta, just the word anta. Anta means you. When you're saying anta, you don't say anta, you say anta. This is ikhfa, the nasal sound. Okay, so that was lahm jali and lahm khafi. Those are just some of the lahm khafi. There are many more, but those are the major ones that it will be beneficial for us to remember. Now the vowels. In the Arabic language, each letter, just like how we know in the English language, there's A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. These are the letters of the vowels of the English alphabet. Every word has a vowel. Where you cannot have a bunch of consonants to pronounce a word. Just like that, in the Arabic language, there are vowels. There are 3 short vowels and 3 long vowels. Long vowels will come on later. There's the fatha, there's the kasra, and there's the dhamma. These are just ways to pronounce it. Like in cup, this is how you pronounce the fatha. Kasra is like in the word be, there's an e that makes the e sound. And dhamma, in the word like cool, it has the u sound. And just like that, that's how dhamma is pronounced. So there's a fatha, there's a kasra, and the dhamma. And it's, another way to say it is zabr, zair, and pesh. We should try to get into the habit of saying fatha, kasra, and dhamma, inshallah. and there's a sakin. The definition of sakin is adamul haraka, which means that if a word does not have a fatha, kasra, or dhamma, then it's considered to have, it must have a sakin. It has to have one of these four. So if it doesn't have a fatha, kasra, dhamma, then it has a sakin. A sakin is a pause in recitation. You just stop right there. Ta. So the noon, when you stop there, there's a sukoon over there, a sakin. On the meme, there's a sakin over there. Ta. To stop on a letter. This is a diagram of the oral cavity. It's an amazing thing to look at this, because these are all of the teeth, and believe it or not, every single teeth is utilized when pronouncing every single letter in the Arabic alphabet. You don't have to memorize any of these teeth, where it's just a diagram of showing all the various teeth. There's an incisor, the canine, the first premolar, second premolar, the first molar, second molar, and the third molar. And of course, it's on both sides, so there's two central incisors, there's two canines, and so on and so forth. Each of these has an Arabic name as well. So makhraj, if you remember the word makhraj, we talked about it yesterday from the triliteral verb kharaja yakhruju, means to come out. Makhraj is a place of coming out. So makhraj is that part of the mouth from where a letter is pronounced. And like I said, each letter is preserved. Exactly where that letter comes out from, that very place is preserved in the books of Tajweed, in the books of Qira'ah. So to figure out whether one is pronouncing the letter from the correct makhraj, give a sakin to the letter and bring a hamza with a fatha before the letter. For example, if one wants to know the makhraj of the letter ba, how does ba originate? Exactly where does it come from? The simple technique of realizing where it comes from is give the letter a sakin. So put a sakin on the letter, and before the letter add a hamza. A hamza with a fatha or a kasra or dhamma. Usually a fatha is a little easier. And then pronounce the letter. Ab. Everyone pronounce ab. When pronounce ab, you'll notice that it's when the wet portions of the lip, when they come together, that's how ba is pronounced. Why is it that one has to actually do this technique? Because, for example, the letter hamza. The letter hamza, the actual sound of hamza does not sound anything like the letter itself. The letter name is Hamza, but it's pronounced A. That's how it's pronounced. But you can't translate that through the actual letter. That's why to actually know the makhraj of the letter, the way to figure out the makhraj of the letter, give the letter a sakin, and the letter before it add a Hamza with the fatha on top. You can do that to any letter. You want to figure out the makhraj of Ta, put a sakin on top of it, and then put a Hamza with the fatha on top. Atu. From that you can realize, so like ayn, or if you want ghayn, for fa, af, or for qaf, aqu, for kaf, ak, for ta, at, for tha, ath, so on and so forth. So the first makhraj. I want to go over all the makharij inshallah today. So we'll try to go through this a little bit faster inshallah. So the makhraj of alif. So alif, the common misconception about alif is we all think that alif makes the sound of a, and hamza also makes the sound of a. But alif is its own distinct letter. Again, like how I said, if alif and hamza are two separate letters, that means both of them have different pronunciations. That means both of them are two completely distinct letters. The alif and the ba are not the same. Similarly, the alif and the hamza are not the same. So alif has its own makhraj, and hamza has its own makhraj. We'll go over hamza towards the end. Alif, the actual makhraj of alif is from the empty part of the mouth. See, alif doesn't really have a sound to it. Alif doesn't really have a defined makhraj. It just comes from the emptiness of the mouth. In Arabic, it's known as jawful fam, the emptiness of the mouth. So you can't really pronounce alif. Alif is pronounced when a letter before it has a fatha on top. And this is how you stretch the letter. For example, when you want to stretch the letter ba, add an alif after it and it becomes ba. So that stretching sound is the makhraj of alif. It comes from the emptiness of the mouth. No defined makhraj. Number two, the makhraj of ba. The makhraj of ba, how we just went over, is when the wet part of both of the lips meet. And how do we know what the makhraj of a letter is? We put a sakin to it, and before it we add a hamza with the fatha on top. So ab, if everyone can pronounce with me, ab. We'll go over the aspect of qalqala later. But ba has a bouncing sound as well. Right? So ba, ab. So when examining it, closing your eyes and seeing exactly how your lips form, you'll notice that there's the dry part of the lips and there's the wet part. So the wet portion, when they meet, this is how the makhraj of ba forms. So ab. Next one is the makhraj of ta. Now ta is paired with ta and dal as well, because they all come from the same place. The makhraj of ta, dal and ta is when the tip of the tongue meets the roots, the gum line of the upper central incisors. The tip of the tongue meets the roots of the upper central incisors. So at, ad, at. Now you'll notice the difference between each one. That one, for ta and ta, they're both the exact same thing. Ta and ta are the same exact thing. The only difference is ta is empty mouth and ta is full mouth. And dal is the one that it barely touches, because there's going to be a bouncing sound with dal. So at, ad, and at. So these front two teeth, they're called the upper central incisors. There's the lower central incisors and the upper central incisors. Thanaya ulya and thanaya sufla. This is how in Arabic they're pronounced. So the gum line right above those, that's where the ta, dal, and ta come from the tip of the tongue. Next one is the makhraj of tha, dhal, and dha, when the tip of the tongue meets the edge of the upper central incisors. Now we're not talking about the gum line anymore. We're talking about the tip of the central incisors. So over here, again, we add the sakin and the hamza before. Ath, ath, adh, and al. Now the difference between dha and tha, again, just like ta and ta. Dha is pronounced with a full mouth, and tha is pronounced with a empty mouth. And dhal barely touches it. There's no bouncing sound in dhal though. So it's ath, adh, al. Now what happens sometimes when we're reading the ta'awudh, when we say قُلْ أَعُوذُ, or we say أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ, sometimes what happens is sometimes people say أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ, أَعُوذُ. Now this is not the makhraj, there's a dhal over there. If you look at it, there's a dhal. And the makhraj of dhal is when the tip of the tongue touches the edge, the edge of the central incisors, the upper central incisors. Not za. Za has a separate makhraj. You can see the difference between za and dha. Very, very distinct letters. Next one is the makhraj of jim, sheen, and ya. Pretty easy letters. When the center of the tongue rises and meets the palate. You'll notice that when you say these letters, the breath actually stops. It doesn't go through because the tongue covers the top of the mouth. So jim. So again, when you're pronouncing it, we should put the sakin. So aj, ash, and ay. You can really feel the tongue touching the top of the palate in the ya. Ay, ash, aj. Next one is the makhraj of ayn and ha. So the throat, there's a better way. I'll try to make a chart with all the specific designations of the letters. But for right now, number 6, the makhraj of ayn and ha is the center of the throat. The throat is divided into 3 regions. There's the lower part, aqsa al-halq, the middle part, wast al-halq, and there's the upper part, the upper portion of the throat. So in the middle portion of the throat, this is where ayn and ha come from. Ayn and ha. So again, we'll do the method to recognize the makhraj. And there's ah. Ah can get a little bit harder because sometimes when you're making that ha sound, the kha comes as well. Ah, we trying, putting takalluf to it, trying really hard, and then the kha may come. But we should try our best to make the ha sound. And like alhamdu, not alham with the kha, alhamdu like that. It's alhamdu, alhamdu. The makhraj of ghayn and kha. This is the top upper part of the throat. When I'm explaining ghayn, oftentimes what I do is, the gargling sound you make? The gargling sound when you put water in your mouth. Obviously we shouldn't be doing it when we're fasting because there's a chance of the water going down our throat. But when we're not fasting, the gargling sound we make, that's basically the sound of ghayn. Except there's no water in your mouth. That's all it is. Right? So ghayn, agh. Now remember, don't make the agh sound because this is not a kha, this is a gha. Right? At the same time, this is not a kaf either. Kaf is right on top of ghayn. Agh, agh. And then there's agh. The kha is a little bit easier, but the ghayn is very subtle. Agh. Again, it helps to know that it's a gargling sound, because sometimes it's easy to do that sound, but without the water in your mouth, you can imagine just doing it and it makes a ghayn sound. Gha. Like ghayril maghdubi. There's two ghayns over there. The makhraj of ra. We'll go over ra in terms of full mouth and empty mouth, but the actual makhraj, when the tip of the tongue together with the immediate top of the tongue meets the gums of the upper central incisors and the lateral incisors. So there's an upper, and right next to the upper central incisors, there's a lateral incisors. So ra. Again, ra does not have, sometimes when people do ra, it's very common for them to make lots of bouncing sounds. Like making like the motorcycle sound. Some people do that sometimes with ra. Ra is you only bounce the tongue once on the immediate top and the tongue, and the tip of the tongue, the immediate top, when it meets the gums. Just the gums. You're not touching the actual teeth. It's just the gums. Right? There's different ways. Also in Urdu language, there's a different letter. There's also ra. That's I don't know. It's very hard to pronounce that one. It took me years to figure out that. But ra is easier, and ra is not like the letter R in the English language. Oftentimes, what happens is when you're reading the letter ra, we pronounce it with an R. R actually doesn't even touch the tongue, the tip of the tongue, the gums of the central and the lateral incisors. So this is what the difference. Sometimes it happens that we bring the English dialect into the Arabic dialect and then we mess up the letters. So ar. Don't say ar. It's just one bounce. Ar. Min sharri. You can see the ra really touching that. Min sharri. Next one, the makhraj of za, sin, and sad. And this one you can really feel the s sound. Right? This is one of those letters where even when you're whispering, you can hear this letter still. You can't hide the sin, because the sin, it makes the hissing sound kind of. So the makhraj of za, sin, and sad, when the tip of the tongue meets the edge of the lower central incisors together with the upper central incisors. So now it's touching both of the incisors, the top and the bottom, thanaya ulya and thanaya sufla. So az, like the sound that a bee make, buzz, az, as, and there's as. You'll see the difference between as and as. One is full mouth, one is empty mouth. As is one of the heavy letters. As. Okay. The makhraj of dad. Now this is the hardest letter of the Arabic language. Dad is not pronounced like dal except with full mouth. Dad. People sometimes pronounce it dad, just like dal, right? Except dal is dad instead, right? Dal, what was the makhraj of dal? When the tip of the tongue touches the gums of the upper central incisors. This is the makhraj of dal. Dal, ta, and ta. These all come from the same makhraj. But dad, actually, you don't even touch the beginning, the front part. This is going to take a while to understand. At least to remove your tongue in such a way that you can pronounce it correctly, it took me months. It took me months to pronounce this letter. Sometimes there's books actually. There's books written just on this letter. Because this letter is the hardest letter in the Arabic language to pronounce. So when the side of the tongue meets the roots of the premolars and molars. Now premolars and molars, they're not in the front. Where are the molars? They're in the back. This is how we chew our foods, they're in the back. And we're touching, you can either do the left side or the right side or both. Scholars mention you can do left side, right side, or both. Easiest way is to do it with the left side. And when you pronounce the letter, you'll notice that sometimes there's a small bubble that comes on the side. There's like this small bubble that comes on the side on your cheek as well when pronouncing it. So the side of the tongue, if this was a tongue, this side over here, this would be touching the gum line of the premolars and molars. Ideally on the left side. The left side is easier. And the common place that it comes, and a lot of mistakes, like wala zalin, wala dalin. It's wala dalin, wala dalin. This is going to take a lot of practice. It's going to take a lot of practice. If you don't get it right now, just remember it took me months. So it takes a while. Some scholars it takes years. It's very hard. That's one of the harder letters. Okay, number 11, the makhraj of fa. Fa is very easy when the edge of the upper central incisors meets the wet part of the lower lip. Af. Central incisors, the lower part. This is where ba came from. The makhraj of qaf, when the raised back part of the tongue rises and meets the palate above it. The palate is the back part. If this were the tongue, this is the palate over here. Right on top of kha, this is where qaf come from. Qaf is when the back portion of the tongue rises and meets the palate. Qaf, qaf. And this is different from kaf, when the lower back part. Again, this is very hard to imagine because we can't like put ourselves inside the back of our mouth. But just closing your eyes, sometimes it helps. This is how I used to practice. So, aqo, aqo, ak, aqo, ak. You'll notice that the qaf comes a little bit lower and the kaf comes a little bit higher. Kaf is a little bit more towards the front of the mouth. Aqo, 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 ak, ak. The makhraj of lam, when the edge of the tongue meets the gums of the teeth from one premolar to the other premolar. These are the top front 8 teeth. So lam, al, al. Next one is mim. So ba was the wet portions of the lips when they meet. Mim is going to be the dry portions, when the dry part of both lips meet. So there's ab and there's The makhraj of noon. Noon, so there's lam. This is going to be premolar to premolar. Then there's noon. Noon is from one canine to the other canine. The canine are the sharper teeth in the mouth. So when one canine from the other canine, again, on the top teeth. These are the top front teeth. This is the gums. An. Now this is the actual makhraj of noon. Again, noon has, when doing ghunna or ikhfa, it has a different makhraj. Even for that, that's a different makhraj. Because the nose is utilized for that one. The makhraj of waw. This is a partial meeting. Not the complete meeting, but the partial meeting of both lips. Aw. 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 The makhraj of ha and hamza. This is the lower part of the throat. Upper part was ghain and kha. The middle part was ayn and ha, and the lower part is going to be hamza. Hamza is pronounced with an a. So a. This is the only one where there's like a brief stop. A. And there's The way I try to differentiate between ha and ha is the ha is like a sigh, right? When you make that, that's a ha sound. Ha. Ha is a little bit harder. I remember one time where I was working, they thought that they were pronouncing, my name is Muhammad, my first name is Muhammad, and you know how they say Muhammad? That's how they pronounce my name. And then they asked me, and then one of my coworkers thought that she was pronouncing my name correctly. She thought she pronounced every name, and then she's like, I'm pronouncing your name correctly, like Muhammad. I mean, technically it's pronounced Muhammad. And then ha is a very hard word, especially in the Arabic, in the English language. I don't think ha is, there's no such thing as ha. There's an H, and H makes a ha sound though, right? Like hello, you don't say hello. No one says that. It's hello, right? You make the ha sound. So that one's a little bit easier, but the ha is a little bit different. The ha comes from the middle portion of the throat. The makhraj of waw madda and ya madda. Waw madda and ya madda is the empty part of the throat. What other letter came from the empty part of the mouth? There was one other letter. What was it? Alif. Alif was the other letter. Alif was the other letter that came from the empty part of the throat, empty part of the mouth. So waw madda, what waw madda means is when there's a waw with a sakin on top, preceded by a letter with the dhamma. And ya madda means that it's a ya with a sukoon on top, preceded by a letter with a kasra. E, when you do that, the stretching sound comes from the empty part of the mouth. Another example is bu or u. Pronouncing that, the stretching part comes from the empty part of the throat. The makhraj of ghunna, the sound which comes from the bridge of the nose, over here, right here. These are 6 letters. So 6 letters meaning that there's only 2 letters. There's noon and mim, but in different states, all of them, like there's ikhfa, there's idgham, over here there's ikhfa, antum or qawman zalamu, the mim in the state of ikhfa, bihi, this is called qalb. And there's noon in the state of idgham. With ghunna, there's man yaqulu, example, mim in the state of idgham, amman, and there's noon mushaddad, inna, and there's mim mushaddad, amma yatasa'alun, inna allaha azizun hakim, amman khalaqa as-samawati. Okay, so now that the makharij are done, inshallah, what I want to do, the last part is, and after this inshallah we can just take a rest. Just wanted to go over Surah Fatiha. Doesn't look like it's here. Inshallah, everyone has Surah Fatiha memorized, right? So we can just read it verbally, inshallah. Let me see if probably I can pull it up. This will be a little bit easier. Okay. Can everyone see this? Okay, we'll start with ta'awudh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. If everyone can repeat after me. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now again, in Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, important thing over here mentioned that Allah is pronounced with a light mouth. Millah, because the meme has a kasra underneath it. Over here, Ar-Rahman, because it has a fatha on top, we'll go over the specific rules, but since Ra has a fatha on top and Ra has a fatha on top, it will be pronounced with a full mouth. Bismillahir Rahman and Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now for the first ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Now, common mistakes over here. When beginning the surah, there are when there are 5 letters, only in these 5 letters is one allowed to make that bouncing sound, you can say, the double sound. There's qaf, ta, ba, jim, and dal. Easy way is qutubu jad. Only these 3 letters are you allowed to make like aqo, ato, ab, aj, and ad. Only 5 letters. Other than that, it has to be one distinct sound. So when you start Surah Fatiha, you cannot say alhamdu. You have to say alhamdu. You cannot say Allah. There's no double sound. This is not allowed because it's not one of the 5 letters. Ha, again, ha, what is the makhraj of ha? Is the middle portion of the throat. Hamdulillah, again, lillah is going to be empty mouth. Ra is going to be full mouth. And don't say rabbila. Rabb, alhamdulillahi rabbil'a. Rabbil'a is rabbil'a. Very distinct letters. And again, there's only 2 letters that you use for the nose, mim and nun. When reading, do not say Rabbil Alameen with your nose. How can you tell? The litmus test is to put your nose, close your nose. Rabbil Alameen. If that's the sound that's coming, then you're using your nose. Rabbil Alameen. The meme has a little bit of a, meme comes from the nose as well, so that's a little bit harder. Maybe Rahim is a little easier. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. So over here, again, the noon with a kasra has a sound, it has a very low sound, meaning that it has a empty mouth. So ni is pronounced with an empty mouth, but the ra is going to be pronounced with a full mouth. So it's a very, very hard transition over here. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Nir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. So remember, every letter has to have its due justice. So when you're listening to Qari Abdul Basit, you'll notice that every letter he pronounces perfectly. Every letter has its due justice. And this is how Tajweed is. Every letter has to have its due justice. So when you're saying Maliki, so Maliki has to be very light. Yo, don't say yo. It's yo. The waw, what is the makhraj of waw? Is the partial meeting of the 2 lips. Partial meeting. So you can't say yaw because that's not the complete meaning. It has to be a circle almost. Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. So oftentimes what happens over here is Iyyaka is given its due justice, meaning that there's a shadda. Mushaddad means that you connect it and then you also continue it. So it's Iyyaka. So you have to make the I and then the ya. So Iyyaka. But what happens in the second one is we don't do the same thing. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka. Some people say wa iyyaka. But it's wa iyyaka. Na'. Again, na' is going to be from the throat. The middle portion of the throat is where ayn comes from. The ta, makhraj of ta, is when the tip of the tongue touches the gums of the central incisors. Ta, ta, and dal. That's where they come from. And then there's ayn. So it's very, very hard to transition over here. It's ta and then a. nasta'een. No problem in reading slowly. There's absolutely no problem in reading slowly. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. And remember to not stretch the dal either. Don't say na'budu. Remember, this was the lahin jali. One of it is to add a letter, and when we stretch it, we're adding the waw mushaddad. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. This is hard again over here. You have to make the transition from noon, which is an empty mouth letter, na, and then the sad. Sad, no matter what, is always going to be full mouth. Sleep, sleep. And then there's ra, and then ta. 3 very hard letters to pronounce back to back. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Over here, one must be careful not to say an'amta, an'amta. It's an'amta. There's a sukoon, and the noon again is not one of the letters where you're allowed to make qalqala. Qalqala is 5 letters: qaf, ta, ba, jim, and dal. Noon is not one of them, and mim is not one of them. So you cannot say an'amta. An'amta has to be very distinct. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. So again, over here there's a ghayn, ghayril. So you're going from a full mouth letter to an empty mouth letter. Ghayril. The ra has a kasra, so over here there's going to be empty mouth. Again, the ghayn, magh, and then the dad. As we discussed, this is the side of the tongue when touching the gums of the premolars and the molars. On the left side, right side, or both. Ideally, you can just do the left side. The left side is the easiest. Maghdubi, and then alay. Make sure you don't say alay. It's not alay. This is called majhul when doing in between sounds. So it's alay, alay. Him walad, and make sure you connect the da, and don't say waladdaleen. Don't say just lad and lam are not separate. Because if you look over here, there's a shadda on the lam, which means that the dad has to be connected to the lam. You have to make that connection very, very distinct, because there is a connection. When one does not make that connection, that means he's deleting a letter, and that's a lahm jali actually. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. One should ideally try stretching the dad for what they say 5 alifs. 5 alifs is basically putting the finger up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is what's considered 5 alifs. So try stretching the dad one more time. So we'll read Surah Fatiha just one more time, inshallah, and then we'll close the session. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, from tomorrow we will begin the last 10 surahs. We'll start from Surah Fil. And I'll try to go over the PowerPoint a little bit quicker so we can sit in halaqat and I can listen individually. Inshallah, right now it's a little bit past time, so we can go rest, inshallah. One thing we'll notice is that when we actually start focusing on the tajweed, our salah naturally will become longer. Sometimes what happens is our salah just goes very quickly, and we don't know how to increase our salah, have more khushu' or more concentration. If we do not know the meaning, we can focus on the tajweed, because now we know the tajweed of the surahs. Well, the surahs that we're reading, we're going to know the tajweed. Right? So we can focus on the tajweed, and you'll notice that you'll have more khushu' in your salah as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us amal on whatever has been taught. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhanallah wa bihamdi subhanakallahumma wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallahu Khairun.